Hi everyone, I'm Liv, a co-curator of Summer Festival, and I'm proud to call myself disabled. I'm a white woman with long brown hair, tied back, and I'm wearing a black scoop neck top. I'm really excited to be interviewing self-advocate Sara Pickard today. Sara is an employee of Mencap, a disability charity here in the UK. Sara has a learning disability herself called Down syndrome, and she's been involved in a wide variety of work supporting people with learning disabilities. Among her many achievements and roles, for the past 5 years, she was the council representative for Europe for an organisation called Inclusion International, travelling to many different countries. She's also been an elected community councillor for the past 10 years. Sara is a member of Hijinks Theatre Company, which is the largest theatre company working with actors both with and without disabilities. Sara is a white woman with short blonde hair who wears glasses, and in this video, she's wearing a stripy multicoloured t-shirt. I really hope you enjoy listening to our interviews. So, hi Sara, it's great to meet you. I'd love to find out more from you about your experience of employment with a learning disability. So what do you do at work? Could you tell us a bit about your job at Mencap Cymru, please?
Yes, of course. So I've worked for Mencap Cymru for about 13 years ago now. So I've really enjoyed it. I worked on quite a few projects which were really interesting. I think the most prevalent project now is a political project called Partners in Politics. I think knowing now that in Wales we have the elections coming up on May the 6th. So young people now, the 16 and 17-year-olds are now allowed to vote. So I think from doing that project with that age group in schools and colleges, throughout that project really taught them that actually by talking about what makes them angry or what they want to see change, they were actually actively involved in politics without knowing it.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. So you're engaging a whole generation of young people in the political process, getting them into politics. That's brilliant to hear.
So that was one project. Then I worked then on others, like a project called Inspire Me. That was about more kind of life skills. So as well as politics, things like how to manage money, how to prepare for work, and volunteering opportunities for young people with disabilities. So that really brought up interesting conversations, if you like, about how they go about managing their money, why that's important, how those conversations and getting young people talking, I think is really important. So that's a great project. And if I can move on to the next project, there's quite a lot involved in Mencap. So one of the projects I really thought was important was a project known as Hidden Now Heard. And this project really carries an emotive side because it's about the older generation of people with disabilities having lived big parts of their lives in institutions. So it was an amazing project because I was one of the people conducting oral history interviews. So really interesting to find out more about the older generation, finding out what it was like for them in institutions, but working with museums then to bring out that hidden history of disability to the public, to put in an educational part. And it was a really great project to be on, because then interesting for me as someone with a visual disability able to conduct these interviews, it kind of brought up kind of the perceptions of me as an employer doing that job. So I learned a lot about myself in that project. So really enjoyed it. And the last kind of project was called Play Our Way. Great project with young people and young carers, where we introduce them to lots of different activities that maybe they've never encountered before. So great things like, I loved it because our staff really got to do these things too. So things like trampolining, whitewater rafting, I'm trying to think on top of my head, indoor climbing, all those kind of activities, horse riding, all the things that young people just want to be able to do that sometimes they don't get to do. And also like residential weekends away, because a lot of young people do things from their home with parents. So to step outside that comfort zone, all of us getting to know each other, facing our fears. I faced many of my fears in that project. I'd never ever done things like whitewater rafting before. I was terrified too. To be all words, that project was so good. And the last kind of project before lockdown came into play was I got appointed the external affairs officer. So externally going out and meeting with lots of different people and events that I was going to. That was in March of 2020, but then I got furloughed. But now I'm taking a career break from Mencap Cymru to take up my new role within the Welsh Government as a disabled people's employment champion. And that's now due to last till January next year. So exciting times.
Fantastic. That sounds really good. I'm glad that there's the role for a disabled person's employment champion within the government. That's fantastic. So my next question is that you might have to cast your mind back to when you started the world of work. Was it easy or hard to enter the world of employment as someone with a learning disability? What got in the way and what helped?
Okay, so for me, I think, well, I went through mainstream education. So I went through mainstream school and then I moved on to mainstream college.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I think that kind of created that I was able to be around people then. I think that may have given me a slight advantage, because then having Down syndrome, I think I helped to educate my fellow friends in school and college. And I think a good example of this, I think, is when I was in school, I know in my sciences, and I got asked to lead one of our lessons on genetics.
Okay.
So great opportunity, because sometimes people may think, oh, why is Sara different then? So being able to actually say, this is what I'm about, actually helped. And I was so glad I got approached to take that lesson on. And yeah, it was, little tweaks like that, I think, really help to
take control of your own story. Yeah.
To make me express my story. So yeah, I think as well, when it comes to what got in the way or what helped, I think as well, some advisors may have low aspirations when it comes to a person that has a learning disability. And at the same time, people themselves, people with disabilities can have low expectations of themselves. So it could be a job comes up and they think, well, I can't possibly do that. But actually, they can when they think differently. So I think that's something as well. But benefits as well, I think, can hold some people back and can be confusing. So yeah, sometimes it could be that many people feel that they'll be worse off if they go into employment knowing that they might lose their benefits. So that's something that's quite a big thing, I think, as well. for a person who has a disability.
Yeah, so it's understanding
Yeah.
and getting that correct support so they know what's available.
Yeah.
What can employers do to make workplaces and jobs welcoming?
Okay, so I think for this one, it's about kind of making things like the adverts and the application forms in an accessible way. So I think that's really important, because if things aren't in really easy to read language, that might sometimes hinder a person with a disability understands. And maybe things like, instead of having a formal interview for a job, which can be quite a big thing for some people, maybe it's about them doing things like work trials, so it's less formal and the person themselves with a disability can feel at ease. That's important. And maybe making people in workplaces aware of the person's strengths and the support that they might need. Could be something. Having a buddy. So for me now, in my job in Welsh Government, I've got a buddy who works separately for Welsh Government, but in a separate kind of department, if you like. So Tracy's my buddy, and we have really nice, relaxed conversations. If it's a bit of work-related stuff or how things are going, it can be literally about anything. So it's nice to have someone that you can just offload to sometimes, I think. But job coaches, support people, just being aware that employers can always access things like support and reasonable adjustments, I think, is something, because it could be, if someone makes a reasonable adjustment for a person with a disability, that person will be able to work for whatever business it is, just by making something easier, can have a big advantage for that business, definitely. And it's priceless then. You're holding on to a wealth of talent pool, as I like to put it. And I think that's really important as well.
So you're opening up your workplace to that talent pool just by changing a few things slightly. So that person is welcome.
That's well, Liv, if that's okay. I think what's also really important in all of this is the approaches. So for example, it's about really understanding that social model of disability instead of medical model of disability, because sometimes you hear things that are more medical than social. So the societal approach of society doing the disabling instead of the person. And then it comes into the barriers. So if you can actually remove some of those barriers that society puts out, it's a lot easier for a person with a disability to be able to show what they can achieve.
Fantastic. So if you remove those barriers, people can steam ahead on their journey.
Definitely, yes.
Why is it important to you and for society for people with disabilities, and especially learning disabilities, to have work opportunities?
Right. This is quite a wide answering question, I think, because for me, having a job for me is everything. I think it really helps me with growing my independence. I'm able to do my job really, really well, knowing that I can maybe feel that element of control, that I can do this job. I think that's really important. I think confidence is the same. I think it really helps me to be a lot more confident, and especially if I find that if there's like a part of the job that maybe is quite a difficult situation, maybe, or a situation that is new to me, that I feel like I can be a bit more myself and putting myself into that frame of thinking of the job. I think that's really important as well. And just to, I think, on a bigger point, like the equality part, I think is huge. So I think it's really important that for anyone with a disability to be in any kind of employment, it means then that you've got equal jobs for equal pay. And for me, that is what we want. Definitely what we want.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
That's okay.
Finally, I'd like to ask about any specific tools or processes that can help. So you mentioned a work trial. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that involves?
I'll try.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think what I mean is just it's less of a interviewing situation. So it could be there's a job, and so introducing someone with a disability on a form of trial basis.
Right. So somebody can get an experience of the job, and they can get experience of the person.
Yes. Sorry,
lower
that's
pressure.
Right. Yeah.
Brilliant.
A bit like work placements as well. So like I've done work placements within nurseries and creches. So like I love young children. So being in so I've worked in like a school nursery, really enjoyed it. Because being around little ones, to get the experience of that is just amazing. I've done things like work placements in schools, where I've worked a reception, in the school library. So all really different skill sets there. And then I did also do a bit of a year's job in a special needs school. So that's for reception as well. So that job was good. I think it was really my first introduction in a way to profound and complex disability. Even if I wasn't necessarily working with the young people themselves, because I was more just in reception office. But that job was okay. I did learn a lot about myself and the kind of world of work, if you like. But then that helped me to set up the stepping stones to where I am now on my employment journey.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds really important then on your journey, to have had opportunities to have a work trial or work placement in a few different areas, a few different settings, to build transferable skills. That sounds fantastic. Have any more questions? Do you have any words of advice or encouragement to give to someone with a learning disability who's thinking about finding a job for the first time?
Okay, so what I would probably say is to seek advice and support. There are lots of organisations out there that can help you to get started. So things like supported employment agencies can really help. Career service and organisations like Mencap. So I think about reaching out to them as a starter, and also even always show your strengths and be prepared to have help when you need it with things that you might find difficult at first. That's what I would say to someone who has a disability going into employment. I should say as well, sorry Liv, one thing I did forget to mention. One thing that's really helped me, I think as well, when it comes to speaking in front of people. So I've done a lot of acting. So I work with Hijinks Theatre Company. I've actually been on tour twice with them, doing professional productions. So I've learned a lot through that as well. I think any girl's dream to be in a van touring with a stage manager and professional actors. Fantastic opportunity. That helped me to find my feet then in things like not being nervous going into an unfamiliar situation with work. I've done things like every year I do a talk to medical students
Oh, wow, okay.
in Cardiff University Hospital. And sometimes that can be over 300 people in a lecture theatre. So yeah, the first time I did it, I remember thinking, wow, there's a lot of people in here. But then telling them about my story and then opening it up to questions, and that is quite interesting because you have lots of questions, maybe directed to myself, but also to my mum and dad. And so even my parents, I think, slightly struggle for some of those questions because they're quite like about before I was born and things like that. So
Right.
yeah, the genetics and how parents found out I had Down syndrome, all that kind of stuff. But like WI groups I've talked to as well. So I've had plenty of experience of talking to lots of different people. And yeah, I think that always helps in employment opportunities as well, I think.
That's great. Yeah, so lots of chance to build up your confidence in public speaking and in new situations. That's really sage advice. Thank you so much.